The fears we faced as children at the hands of bullies who noticed we were different, or adults who couldn't meet our needs, can constrict us in later life, or can become something we learn to move through and around, just like water. So how can we turn fear and shame into stillness and strength? And how do we make space for others who need help to show up just as they are? Hello, I'm Sally Aneri, and welcome to Fearless Forward, the podcast that asks leaders how they've faced their fears. Today I'm in conversation with a man who helps others leap into the unknown, drawing on his own experience of doing it himself more than once. With a PhD in atomic physics, Carlos Saba left science to join a digital advertising agency. Building on self-taught coding skills, he worked his way from developer to director in just 4 years. And then, in search of autonomy and freedom, he took the brave decision to give it all up in favour of founding a digital studio with his lifelong friend Lawrence McCahill. For a while, they were living the life they wanted, balancing family life with work they were good at. But then the niggly feeling came. The work wasn't fulfilling, expanding the business didn't excite them, and life lacked spark. It was at that time that they discovered 2 books that really resonated with them, Eric Ries's The Lean Startup and Tony Hsieh's Delivering Happiness. Delving into the fields of happiness and positive psychology, they had the inspiring idea of combining their passions for both entrepreneurship and happiness to help others build profitable businesses founded on purpose and passion. They launched this new venture alongside their existing business, and 2 years later it proved so successful that it became their full-time work. 12 years on, under the banner Make Money, Do Good, Be Happy, the Happy Startup School is a firmly established alternative business school and learning platform. It runs a variety of programs, events, and courses carefully created to generate fun and friendship, as well as serious learning. It's a vibrant global community too, and Carlos and Lawrence have helped thousands of people around the world reconnect with their values and design work that feels meaningful and sustainable. Carlos is also a prolific online writer, podcaster, and coach who supports experienced professionals and entrepreneurs to make their midlife pivot. My own life, he says, is a long, winding transition. In our conversation, we dig into what he means by this, the fears he's faced along the way, and how his more recent personal exploration has helped him make sense of the impact of past events on his present life. So, Carlos, I'm curious, of all the twists and turns in your life, what stands out for you right now?
Shutting down a business that I knew well in terms of how it worked and how it made money, to start something completely new and had no idea where it was going to go. And that business being the Happy Startup School, that business now being 12 years old, and recognizing when I reflect back how scared I was over the first 6 years of that journey.
When you reflect back, how scared you were, how did it feel at the time?
I think there's a little bit of frustration, anger, a need to control. Lawrence, who you know well, will readily say or remember me asking him, what's the plan? What's the plan? Where are we going? What are we doing here? What's the purpose? Why are we doing this thing? So there was at one level, there was a real need for safety in terms of just, is this the right thing to do? Are we allowed to do this? Do we have permission to make money in this way? Do I have permission to make money in this way? But that was just noise. I've recognized deep down, and ironically, because of the work that we do and we try and help other people to understand, is like I needed to understand what it meant for me. Why is this my work? Why am I doing this thing? And it was a real journey of a slow dissolution of one identity and a messy chrysalis moment that extended for much longer than I wished, of trying to work out what is a new version of me.
And how does that feel now?
Amazing. Amazing, not because I feel like I've succeeded or I've accomplished everything I need to accomplish, because I'm not scared as much anymore. I don't feel worried or as anxious about the future as I used to. still there, still fears. There's still the, as our friend Ben Johnson would say, the 3:47 a.m. wake up. We're like,
Mm.
but I'm able to. That doesn't linger as much. It doesn't sit there and fester as much as it used to. I'm able to feel it and then move with it.
So back then, the need for a plan, the need to kind of have a sense of control over what was happening and what the future held, sounds like it was kind of a fear of the uncertainty of that.
I've thought about that a lot. And I used to beat myself up saying, "Oh, you're just scared of uncertainty." And that was the internal meme, I think, particularly between myself and Lawrence. I would say, like, I'm the one who's wanting structure, control all the time. But actually, that's not true. I spent all of my life jumping into the unknown, working fully with uncertainty. And I recognize now it was less about fear of uncertainty. It was really about agency. And I would say, what did I call it? Clarity or knowing, but it's this is mine to do. And there was an element of me clinging on to an identity that I had when we were running our digital agency. I was a technical person. I was the programmer. I got a PhD. I got a big brain for complex problems. This is my thing. I fix technical problems and create infrastructures based on maths. And then we start an events company, essentially. And it's like, I was clinging on to where do these tech skills apply in this world? And yes, I can help build websites, and yes, I can help create little platforms for people to engage with us, and the other sort of minor technical aspects to building a brand, building a mission, creating a movement. But that didn't feel, I didn't feel any ownership over that at the time.
And it sounds to me as if you were trying to find your place in all this.
Yes. What is my work to do?
And when did that start to emerge? You mentioned it was a moment that lasted longer than you'd have liked. A little bit of judgment there around that, Carlos. I mean, who knows, right? I mean, these things, goodness me, when do we ever know?
Oh, no, I now know where I knew. I definitely, through the language of needs, I have identified very clearly when all of this came together. And so the way I like to look at the world, or what's helpful for me these days, is I have four very clear and present needs: learning, play, contribution, and connection. Learning has always been very, very clear for me. It's the reason why I did a PhD. It's the reason why I step into the uncertainty. It's the reason why I like starting new things. I love to learn. But play for me is also important, because it's about, and this is something I've learned, I've embraced. It's something that's always been there, but never been fully embraced, because play seemed frivolous. Now I interpret play, and this might not capture it, but the way it comes up for me is purposeless action. I'm not trying to get anywhere. I'm just trying to do something in the moment that feels energizing, exciting. There's nothing to win, nothing to claim. There's a presence around play. Then there's contribution. And for a long while, contribution was like a weight, a responsibility. You need to be, and this is a parent script, you need to, particularly my dad, you need to be a valued member of society. So if you're not contributing, what value do you have? But then I've learned that actually contribution is an inside out journey now. It's about, like I said before, what is my work to do? Given my own knowledge, lived experience, how I find joy, where I find energy, how does that fit within the world? Where can it fit in the world? Where is its best fit in the world? And contribution, less about trying to help everyone, but about knowing exactly who I can help best. And not because of my skills, but because I actually really believe in the work and I connect with those people. And then that kind of finally ends with the idea of connection, and this real desire to be fully seen, fully heard, but also appreciate when I am in a space where someone else feels fully seen and fully heard, and what that level of intimacy does for my sense of meaning. So through that lens of those four needs, and then when we started doing our Vision 2020 program, which is a lot of learning, but a lot of contribution, a lot of connection, and I discovered a lot of play, because we do a lot of live calls and a live coaching, which is It is really about being present and playing with ideas and playing with models that help kind of create some engagement. And I remember hearing about the infinite game, reading about that, and this idea of there's games that you play to win, and there's games that you play just to keep them going. And that for me is where I feel this work now seems so meaningful. I'm not here to dominate a market or change the world. I'm here to hopefully do this work as long as I can with as many people as I can. And that now say, all right, before when we were running events, it felt like very much about experiences and creating experiences people enjoyed. I never went to festivals as a kid. I wasn't someone who went camping a lot. I enjoy events, but it isn't something I don't like organizing parties. But now I love to turn up at these events because I love to have the connection and the conversations. I love to be able to share something that might be of help. I love to just be present and to play in those spaces. And I'm always learning. I meet people like yourself, and I'm always learning. And that's where now it all ties together.
I'm feeling a sense of all of these threads, and through the lens of the needs, which feel extremely clear, a strong sense of purpose, which is at the heart of your work. So I suppose it always was, wasn't it? I mean, as far as I understand it, purpose was at front and centre in terms of why the Happy Startup School even exists. And yet, it sounds as if it's something that became super clear to you personally, in the sense of your own purpose, a little later on, more recently in the scheme of things. And it's quite strong now, isn't it? Strong, clear. How lovely that purpose comes from a sense of present purposelessness through play, almost.
Yeah, it's interesting this, because I feel like I've got a dirty little secret.
What's that?
I don't believe our work was really truly about purpose in terms of the big P purpose.
Okay.
Well, not least for me, because it felt very kind of grandiose, be the change you want to see in the world, create meaningful impact, and particularly in this age of climate change, economic instability, war, which feels like, those are things that need to be addressed. If I was going to have a purpose, creating world peace is a very grandiose purpose, but it's also the purpose that most people will say when they're on stage, interviews, what would you love to do? What's your thing? I'd want world peace. Yes, I come back to that phrase, what's my work to do? And this is my own personal journey with this. When I think of the big things in the world that need to change, it can feel quite overwhelming. And like, I'm a tiny cog in a ridiculously, infinitely complex machine. But when I think about what makes sense to me, and this is probably purpose with a tiny p, because of the experiences I've had in my life, and I recognize sometimes it's to do with the pain and challenges that I've faced. That sense of like, I don't wish that for other people who are going through similar journeys to myself. And so while I could tell a story about if I help entrepreneurs and midlife professionals find out who they truly are, so that they can design businesses and work that are truly aligned to themselves, so that they can make money, do good, and be happy, and that will create a beautiful society that then will make world peace. I could do that. It kind of starts to drift away from my core, as opposed to I value connection, I value learning, I value contribution, and I really enjoy play. And that's my tiny p purpose.
So purpose doesn't have to be some big world-changing thing, does it? In fact, I wonder if it's even more valuable to be with a small p and be more about, how we show up, how clear we are about the work, how we then do the work.
I welcome challenge on this, and I fully acknowledge my fear around big P purpose is that I will burn out in the process of serving that. And this idea of a story of like, if I'm striving, and I just think because I've met so many people who are trying to make massive change in the world, and at some level, something else has gone wrong.
As it always does.
Something's broken, something's disconnected, and it's like, and at a very selfish level, so I don't want that.
No, you don't want. Is there something there about not wanting to take on the huge purpose with a big P because of what it will bring in terms of pain and suffering and agony and potential burnout?
There's two aspects to this that I would say that come up for me. One is, who am I to say that I'm right, that this is the right thing to do, to bring down corporations and multinationals and the way they work, because we should have more small business type marketplace environments where it's all about small collectives as opposed to big monolithic structures. Who am I to say that's right? Who am I to proclaim this is the way we should go? And so there's maybe a fear of judgment, a fear of getting it wrong, a fear of the attack from other people. And then there's another aspect is like, I also know that it's much more complex. Everything is nuanced. Everything, there are different perspectives to this thing. And maybe my Achilles heel is I go straight to the different perspectives rather than what I want to say. And so this is where I may stumble a bit, because my default isn't to say this is what it should be and to like demand to be heard. I'm more about scanning what are all the voices, and how do I try and integrate and understand those voices, and then share from that perspective, and then realize a little more often than not it's not that simple.
Yes, quite. So the difference between simplifying and oversimplifying. But, knowing that, as you say, everything's nuanced and fear is a part of all of our decision making, inevitably, and I'm not hearing this in you now, but I wonder if it has been part of the journey, because it can mean that you end up not following your heart and your soul. So bringing this back to now, what is the work you're doing now that feeds those needs, that feels purposeful and clear?
So practically there are three things, and I'll go through them in like chronological order, in order of creation. So there's our Happy Startup Summer Camp. And this is for one of better terms, it's a business hippie festival. So festival because there's joy and fun and music and outdoorsness and nature. But business in terms of there's learning about how to make things happen, how to make money, but also how to manage ourselves, how to lead, how to connect in a transactional world, but coming from a human place. And that's the hippie part. And that meets my need for connection, because 150 people in a field for 3 days, unless you run to the corner of the field and stay there for 72 hours, you're going to connect with someone. It meets my need for play, because we're away from the day-to-day. Lawrence and I are blessed with amazing volunteers and organizers, Abby and Claire, just fantastic, so that we just get to be present and be in the space. It meets my need for learning every single time, because whether it is an impactful talk or just a conversation in the fire and I just discover a new idea. And then in terms of contribution, it's off the scale. When people say it's like coming home, or they don't want to leave, or everyone's just hugging each other, it's this sense of like, okay, something valuable's made here. So altitude, similar, which is our retreat in the French Alps. It's 7 days. It's a 20th of the number of people, says, even a 10th, I say, of the number of people, 15 to 20 people. But the elements are the same. We have people from all backgrounds, all sorts of industries, all sorts of experiences, lots of knowledge, who are willing to share. And so we always learn. We do it in a format that isn't too rigidly structured. We can learn as we're walking up a mountain. We can learn as we're having a mindful walk with yourself. We can learn in sitting in a hot tub. There's a playful aspect to everything. When you spend 7 days with people, particularly in environments that you're not used to, you get to open up a lot more, and you find lifelong friendships like yourself. We've known each other now, coming up to 10 years. So that's a testament to that need to being met, of the need of connection. And then finally, just again, the people have collaborated, have found new businesses, have chosen new directions, come again. So that need for contribution is well and truly met. And then the final thing is our group coaching program, Vision 2020, which was born from lots of experiments that we did. My need to want to, inverted commas, teach, but not teach from this is how we do things, but create tools that help people think for themselves. So that creation of tools was very playful for me. It felt like it was of service, so that sense of contribution. But then we work with people over 20 weeks and we meet each other every week for at least an hour. And so we get to really understand and know each other well, and we create spaces where people can really open up. So that sense of connection, again, goes off the charts. And I'm always learning to improve. For me, a regular word of the year is depth. And that's an important thing for me. And having done a PhD in physics, I'm very familiar with the idea of going narrow and going deep. And there's something around depth that really enriches the soul for me. And so, yeah, with that program, I'm feeling all four needs being met. And so that's why everything, and then, everything around that. We have a community of beautiful people here in Brighton. There's lots of people here. They're organizing to go for a walk on this Friday. We get to meet each other for socials. We get to have conversations over coffee. It feels like an idyllic bubble.
Isn't there something about when we teach and coach and support others? Is there sometimes a danger that they learn the tools so well, they apply them so skillfully, that they'll avoid some of the pain through which the very best learning occurs?
I love this question, and there's so many ways I can go with this. The first phrase that springs to mind is you can teach a person to fish, or you can give them a fish. I feel if I just bring it to the coaching world, there's lots of particularly marketing gurus giving people fish. Have this fish, and it will last a day, a week, a year. But the world is uncertain, things change, and also we change. And so, why am I stretching this analogy? It's that when you have tools, when you're given skills, and particularly if you're given skills that you practice and embed and own yourself, I believe that creates resilience in the face of seeing those challenges again. So rather than being given an answer, just do this, just create this, and then you're done. It's like, how will we create this? What are the principles here that make sense to you? Whether it is to do with pricing, a fish analogy to pricing is like, oh, you just need 3 options: expensive option, medium option, cheap option, and you'll be fine. As opposed to the learning how to fish analogy is like, you are going to get scared of saying a number. And the reason you're going to be scared about saying that number because you've got a story about money. And if you understand that and you work with that, you'll be able to work better with the low, medium, high price strategy. And I think whether this is coaching, I also believe this as for teaching, even with my children. It's like, it's not, I want to spoon feed them. This is how you do it. Everything's going to be rosy. Like even my son, it's like, I have this desire that he does not have to get a 9-to-5 job, that he will be able to work for himself. But ultimately, it's not even about working for himself, that he will have the entrepreneurial, for want of a better term, and creative mindset to make money in the way he needs to make money, to make impact in the way he needs to make impact, and to do that from a place of self-knowledge. And that, to be able to then step out of a safe container of a community, of a program, of an event, to then use those skills to navigate a very different world. And the reason I used bubble, and a very simple example of this, is everyone loves to hug at summer camp. But some of people will go out and then be at a train station, and not everyone who meets you for the first time wants a hug. They have boundaries. Not everyone in their conversation with you wants to go deep and talk about the painful stuff that they've been experiencing that day. And so this is the bubble aspect of it. It's like within this space of the events and the programs we create, you are given permission to be yourself authentically, in inverted commas. And the kinds of people who are attracted to this space really want to be seen, but are scared or have been conditioned by what showing up meant, whether that was judgment, rejection, or even just fear in other people because they didn't know how to. You were too much, for instance. So then to come to a space like summer camp or even altitude or even on our group call with our programs, like, I want this every day. I want this to be with everyone. And then you go to your mum or your dad and say, like, let's talk some, feelings and needs. And it's like, no, they're not ready. They haven't had the experience. They don't have the need. They're a different generation, whether it's friends, colleagues, whoever it is. So there is a level of, I'm going to say, compassion required when you take this beautiful gift of connection and self-awareness and desire to see someone else and realize some people aren't open to that as much as you desire it, as much as you know, if we have this conversation in this way, it'll be amazing. But they're still, no, not used to this, sorry.
So summer camp is a place where you have full permission to be yourself, no holds barred, knowing that nobody's going to judge you for it. If anything, they're going to welcome it, embrace it. In that sense, it's not real life, because in real life, as you say, it is important to pay attention to the needs and fears of others in how you interact with them and show up, and and have consideration for that, right? Which means you may not show up fully. So isn't the trick, if there is a trick, but isn't the skill and the art about being fully yourself whilst paying attention to what others need and can cope with and expect, and yet not allowing that to interfere with you being fully yourself?
For me, that's a lot of self-awareness work. This is around projections and triggers and stories. It's quite, and what I would say, because of the nature of our work, the nature of our branding, the way we come across, majority of people, I believe, who come to summer camp are relatively self-aware. And so while they turn up as their full selves, they're not a dick about it as well. generally, they're not going to suddenly trauma dump on everyone they see. They're not going to say, this is me, take me as there's a level of compassion and self-awareness generally in most people who come to summer camp. And that's when you go out, I think most people, they desire that connection. But they are relatively self-aware. They're like, okay. And they might not have done any deep therapy to understand why this person isn't receiving them or why they're reacting in a certain way. And so there's a level of self-protectiveness as well as authentic containment, for one of a phrase. Like, we want to turn up as ourselves up. But I think being safe.
Aware of your impact on others.
Exactly. Yes. I think, and that's where self-awareness is so powerful, is you can be authentic and safe at the same time. My experience, particularly in the spiritual world and particularly spiritual tech bro world, there's a lot of unsafe authenticity.
Well, I suppose it's the kind of authenticity, as we've said now in a couple of different ways, that doesn't pay attention to the needs of others.
It's the child part of them screaming, look at me.
The free child, hello. You've talked quite a bit about, you've used the word quite often, deep. And I think you mentioned earlier that your word for this year is depth. And what I'm hearing is that because of your self-exploration, your journey of self-understanding that we're all on, but you've been particularly digging into that, things have got clearer, and you're bringing more of yourself into your work in a way that feels genuinely, rewarding. This is a big question, Carlos, but in doing that work, what have you learned about yourself that you hadn't fully understood before?
The thing I have learned that's most apparent to me now, most clear, that I've learned recently about myself, is how sensitive I am to shame and how quickly it can arise in me, and how that impacts how I behave with others, how I decide what to do, the choices I make, the choices I don't make, and even the stories I tell about other people. And so having that awareness has been, I was going to say game-changing, no, because that's too grandiose. It's still an ongoing journey. I think having that awareness has been helpful, has allowed me to identify, or at least recognize, why I may react in a certain way in certain situations.
And have you figured out where that comes from?
It's a minestrone of things, various ingredients, some clumpy bits of vegetables, some kind of more slippery, soupy bits. A big element of this is in childhood experiences. I came to the UK at the age of 3 from the Philippines. So this is it was 1976. So I can't remember historically the context, but I do remember it was the time of miners' strikes and unrest, Arthur Scargill and Margaret Thatcher in the UK. There was a lot of turbulence going on. I remember it was also a time of skinheads and a level of racism. And I really felt this self-awareness of being different, even at that age, because I would go to, and maybe not 3 as such, but this is like early school days, so the age of 5. I was quite an outgoing child. I was quite a very confident, precocious child. And then I remember incidents at school where I'd be quite effusive, just being myself, but maybe it was too much for others, and how that was reacted to in generally a racist way.
How did you experience the racism, given that you were 5 and probably didn't even know the word at that point? I mean, what were you experiencing?
The names is like, being called Chinese, having comments about my eyes, slitty eyes and color, and basically just very blatantly clear racism.
Yes.
Essentially, what that meant is I was ashamed of how I looked. This a story that I've told some people. Like, I used to push my nose because I got a Filipino flat nose. I used to push my nose together because I wanted it to look more like a European nose. I wanted to change my name because I didn't think Carlos was a too weird name to have in England. I wanted to be Michael Knight from Knight Rider, for those of you who know that.
Well, we laugh, and there was a whole little bit of an identity crisis going on there in terms of not fully embracing who you were.
Well, not belonging. I was in a place where who I was didn't feel safe.
So what did you do about that
put up shields like a demon. I would basically put it in a box. I toned down, to a certain degree, I toned down who I was, but at the same time, I couldn't contain that too much. I didn't mute myself, but I definitely compartmentalized all the painful feelings. And what that eventually manifested as was to avoid feeling pain, I create a persona of Mr. Cool. Nothing phases me. And while inside, I'd be like, ugh. Outside, I'd be like, nope, I'm not going to react. I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to get sad. Even if tears were just about as nope, I would really hold that in. And there's other stories around this idea of emotions, weakness, which I learned. And so it was a big learning or conditioning around being contained, not following any emotional energy.
So not kind of, feeling the emotions and integrating them, so to speak, but pushing them down.
Pushing them down. Because I didn't want the bullies to know that I was upset. I didn't want the people who are trying to hurt me to show that they'd hurt me. So I'm going to box that away. It's a silent protest, a defiance through not reacting. So I was too small to fight, so I just shut down.
Talking of fighting, not everyone knows this, but you're a black belt, 2nd degree black belt, I understand, in Kung Fu. When did that start?
I started martial arts at about the age of 8.
So pretty early on. I'm wondering, was it a part of this?
Yes, yeah. Very connected. It was a need to feel strength and be able to defend myself. And I thought at the beginning it was very much a physical defense, and also I watched a lot of martial arts movies and they look really cool. I think there's an identity thing. It's like heroes on TV who look like me, people who I could look up to, that I could identify with at a physical level. And what I've learned over time, and I've been practicing, nearly 40 years, there's an element of managing my emotions as well, which again wasn't in a healthy way. Because when you are fighting, when you're in combat, it is about not letting anger get in the way a lot. And so I just connected this idea of being a cool-headed person to being a cool-headed martial artist, and learning the martial arts was about being cool in the moment, not reacting. But I don't think that was really helpful. I know that wasn't a helpful framing for martial arts.
And have you reframed it since?
Yes, I do a lot. I've been practicing a lot more Qigong over the past few years, and I've been connecting it to this idea of introception, feeling into what's going on in our bodies, somatic work. and how that connects to the emotions and how that then impacts how I act and behave. A very simple sort of shift would be when I used to spar and fight, whether it's in competition or gradings, I'd get really internally agitated. And so it was my belief at the time of martial arts training was to push that down so I could fight. But still that energy would be there. As opposed to now, I'm allowing it to come up. I'm allowing it to say it's okay. And because of that, it's less in control and I feel more fluid in the moment. And so it's only over the last 5 years, I would say, allowing emotions to rise to the top and then knowing how to respond to them has been the shift.
Yes, that's massive, isn't it?
Yes.
Quite difficult to put into words. I think you did a great job of it, by the way, but it's difficult to put into words. It's something I think we have to feel for ourselves, and for everyone it's different, of course. When we feel in our body, whatever that is.
What I have come to understand and what I've learned is, particularly with Qigong, and the way it was explained to me by a teacher was, if we can imagine our bodies as a network of pipes that transfer energy around our body, which is the Qi, where there's a blockage, there is suffering, there is pain. And Qigong, the practice of Qigong is to maintain the flow of energy. And so what I was doing was suppressing the flow of certain emotional energy, as opposed to what I understand with mindfulness and meditation and other practices that isn't necessarily to do with Qigong. It is noticing the energy. And so that I've shifted this idea of Qigong being about a purely martial practice, which will help me punch harder, break boards, because I'm channeling my energy and allowing my body to relax, to now being able to feel the flow and even conceptualize visually, just to give some kind of perception of a flow of energy in my body and to feel those sensations. And so that's been a slow current journey of integrating this bodily awareness and this emotional experience, and how to, like I said, I can't explain it, but experience it. And that experience being a release and, like you say, a freedom. And to a certain level, and I've learned this through, now I understand why I get so much joy from doing our forms, whether it's snake form, crane form. You do it so much you don't think about it anymore, and then you're just fully in the presence of your body, and it's that sense of flow that creates joy. So there's the flow of energy because of the movement and being present, and the flow of internal energy because you're not suppressing anything and you're allowing it to go somewhere.
As if your mind kind of sinks into your body or something, becomes like a mind body.
It becomes exactly.
Yes. So that's a big journey, Carlos, and looking at where you are now and all of the life you have to lead and all the things you want to do and how you want to be. What does fearless forward mean to you?
Being like water, and that idea of being able to flow through the cracks of whatever's getting in my way. And so when it comes to challenging in emotions like fear, self-doubt, shame, if that was like a big breeze block in my way, finding ways to flow through it by finding the cracks in the wall. So less dwelling on, I can't do anything, and being stuck in that feeling is like, how can I flow through it? I'm reminded of an event I went to last week. It was a open grime night. You familiar with grime, Sally-Ann?
I don't think I am, actually. No, tell me more.
It's a type of rap music.
Oh, yes, of course.
And so there were 5 who were talking about mental health and masculinity. And I brought my son along, and it was really fascinating hearing them talk. But one of them, which I used this phrase, which I really enjoyed, is it's not about moving on from, it's about moving on with. And so this idea of whether I flow through the shame or I'm able to just carry it with less, with it feeling less of a burden. Because it's always going to be there. It's always going to be with me. But I can just move on from it and leave it behind, but it'll just like elastic band hit me in the back. Or I can move with it and carry it and look at it and understand it and be with it and that whole continuous journey of where does it come from? I've been learning a little bit about internal family systems, and this idea of just multiple voices in our heads, multiple parts of us asking to be heard. And there is a child part of mine that is lived a shameful experience or experiences or a culmination of those that will scream and shout. And so I can't put them in the room and close the door because you'll hear them all the time. So I need to let them out. I need to somehow calm them down so that this other part who is looking for adventure, who is wanting to be seen, who is wanting to create, can also be heard.
And the somehow calming those voices down.
Hearing those voices, I found, even at a practical level of whether it's with my children or with my coaches or with anyone, is like when you feel really heard, I believe I've experienced this, just the emotional activation just drifts, well, at least lowers such an extent. So I just need to be, and this is maybe the shift from compartmentalizing these voices and these feelings to just being with them. I'm doing air quotes because I feel that's such a cliche in the coaching world, but listening to them, hearing what they've got to say, and essentially treating them as coaching clients.
And I would say this, wouldn't I? But, the word that comes to mind as a way through is compassion, is understanding.
Oh, massively.
Yeah, understanding the humanity and all of that, knowing you're not alone.
Exactly.
And holding space for those different parts of you, giving them space to be heard, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. And I read a blog post, or I started reading a blog post today about the idea that we want to have someone hold space for us, and it's really scary. And I recognize that with these parts, that they want to be heard, but they're also scared to be heard, or scared to be seen, scared to turn up, or scared to be held.
So you're not, Fearless Forward, it's not about suppressing any of that, far from it. It's about giving it its full voice and listening, right?
You talked about before, like, I'm not black and white, but, saying that you're grey is doesn't really capture it. The phrase I like is like, it's all the colours of the rainbow I want to experience these days. It is about all the different shades and different wavelengths of light that is life, rather than saying, I'm going to choose just the yellow, shiny, orangey bits.
Carlos, thank you so much for this conversation.
Oh, thank you for giving me space and holding me in it.
What do we take from this conversation with Carlos? First, forget the myth of the big P purpose. Instead, identify your needs and integrate them into your work to make the difference you want to make. Carlos is fulfilling his need for learning, play, contribution and connection by building community and creating safe spaces for people to truly connect with themselves and others, to speak and be heard, to listen and learn, and to contribute their gifts. Second, fear is inevitable, and it takes many forms: frustration, anger, shame, the need for control, and those early morning wake-ups. To move through his fear, Carlos is learning to feel it and listen to it, and allow himself to embody the quality of water flowing through and around the cracks that appear on his path through life. Third, bullying and exclusion shape us, but they don't have to define us. For Carlos, a way through his painful childhood experience of not belonging was to turn to martial arts. At the time, they were a route to the strong, cool persona he sought for himself. Now they're a path to greater self-awareness, self-acceptance, and energetic flow. And fourth, the bubble of community is precious, but it's not the whole story. The real work is taking what we learn and using it in the messy world outside. Our individual actions can have far-reaching effects, like a pebble dropped into water, spreading its ripples outwards. And a final thought: what's your work to do, and what gets in your way? Thank you for listening. Fearless Forward is edited and produced by Mark Steadman. I'll be back with you in 2 weeks for our next conversation about how leaders have faced their fears. To be sure of catching it, go to fearlessforward.org or subscribe to my weekly bulletin at skillfulleaders.com.